Good morning, honorable members and AG's office and also our guests in the meeting, which I don't think they are guests in our meeting.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Can I request to be muted?
Recording in progress.
Can I request to be muted or unmuted?
You are unmuted, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Secretary. Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
Why I don't get response to honorable members?
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
We're giving you an opportunity to show us
Thank
your
you.
fantastic technical
Now
skills.
I am happy. I can hear the voices of our honorable members. Welcome, honorable members. Compliments of the season. I hope that you have more strength than before and you are ready for the work and come up with the service delivery this year. You are all welcome and you are being loved by your chairperson. And I hope even this year we are going to continue smoothly as we did last year, as we have created brotherhood and sisterhood in this committee. I also hope that the AG's office has joined. I can see that at least now we are 27 in the platform, including the officials and our backup staff. But I will hear from the secretary whether do we coordinate so as to start the meeting because the time is already 3 minutes past 10. Secretary?
Yes, we do form a quorum, Chair. Chair, there's
Okay.
also a request from the parliamentary streaming service that members and stakeholders, when they introduce themselves, just to switch on their videos, Chair. Please.
They can switch on their videos and introduce themselves.
Yes.
But okay, the meeting is officially opened if we call it. Thank you very much.
We do form a quorum, yes, Chair.
Secretary?
We can proceed, Chair. We do form a quorum.
Yes. Okay. No, I agree. The meeting is officially opened, as I have said already. And then we'll hear from the secretary who is in the meeting and who's not in the meeting. Anyway, let me first introduce myself. I am Nonkosi Mvana. I am given the responsibility to chair this committee of electricity. Let me try and check whether, oh my God, you can see that I'm not a robot, but I don't know what is happening in this audio, but I will try and correct it. But I am there and I'm wearing a pink thing and I am at the back of the parliament. I don't know what has happened. You know, the technology is really sometimes tricking us. Thank you very much. And then, Secretary, can you flight the agenda so that we can adopt it first and then continue? Thanks, Chairperson. I've done number 1, but what I need to do is to introduce and allow the members to introduce themselves. Who's in the meeting, who's not in the meeting. Let's give over the secretary to tell us about the apologies, but those are not important for meeting. Over to you, honorable members.
Chair, it will help if maybe the secretary would call out the members' names so that we know who needs to speak first. Thank you.
Hassan?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm not sure if yeah, there I am. My name is Fisia Hassan. I'm a member of the committee. I did explain to the Chairperson I have an issue in my constituency this morning, so I'm between this meeting and that. But when I do speak, I will put on my camera formally and engage with the AG's report today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Nkosi?
Good morning to all members in the meeting, all guests. My name is Vusi Nkosi, member of the Portfolio Committee from the African National Congress. Thank you.
Mayor Mofokeng?
Thank you.
Mayor Mofokeng?
Let's pass Honorable Mufukeng. Maybe he's struggling with the video.
Mr.
Okay,
Milam?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members, and Happy New Year to everybody. I'm Kevin Milam. I'm from the Democratic Alliance, and I represent the Eastern Cape.
New hairstyle. Welcome. Thank you, Honorable Milam.
Mr. Bapti? Mr. Bapti?
Sorry, my mic was off. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Good morning to officials. My name is Edwin Bapti, and I'm representing the Democratic Alliance on this portfolio. Thank you.
Mr. Mbata?
Welcome, Mr. Bapti. You've got a new hairstyle, you too. Thanks.
Good morning.
Mr. Mbata?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to everyone. My name is Sipho Mbata. I represent Umkhonto Wesizwe.
Sir, Mr. Paulson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbata, Honorable Mbata. Also new hairstyle for the new year. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
Mr. Paulson?
Thank you, Eriko. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, fellow members. Good morning to the Auditor-General's office and the department. And my name is Nazir Paulson. I represent the Economic Freedom Fighters. I trust we're going to have a wonderful 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulson. Everyone has got a new hairstyle for the new year. You too, Paulson. Thanks a lot. Good to see you. Next.
Mr. Three.
Mr. Three.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Wayne Thring, representing the African Party on the Energy and Electricity Portfolio Committee, and wishing you all a blessed 2025. I think my hairstyle is still the same, Chair. Thank you.
It's only the cut that is new. Thank you. You're welcome.
Those are the members on the platform, Chair. I don't see Mr. Molefe. The only apology we received, Chair, was from Mr. Kwankwa, who, due to other work commitments, is unable to attend the meeting this morning, Chair. Those are the apologies received, Chair.
What about Mufukeng? Not yet.
See, he's on the platform, Chair.
Okay, no, it's fine. Thank you very much, Secretary. Those are the honorable members that are present with us. Can we also give over to the AG's office?
Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me wait with a hand.
Chairperson.
Mr. Milam's Chair, Mr. Milam's hand is raised.
Okay.
Chairperson, are we going to adopt the agenda?
We are. We're still on the introduction right now.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I thought the AG would introduce when we got to that item on the agenda. Okay, no problem.
Okay, sure.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to all the honorable members. And we're wishing you from the Office of the Auditor-General all the best for the year 2025. My name is Madidima Lusingo. I'm a business unit leader within the AGSA, and I lead the portfolio that is responsible for electricity and energy. Together with me, I've got Humrani Rabonda. He will just show his face very quickly on the screen. Humrani Rabonda is a deputy business unit leader within the Office of the Auditor General, sorry. And he oversees the Eskom audit, and he's also responsible for the energy portfolio within the Office of the AGSA. Together with him is Bongumusa Tabete, who also supports our work on the Eskom audit. Bongumusa, if you can also just flag your video so that the honorable members can see you. And I'm also accompanied by Kabelo Makitla, who is our parliamentary oversight support within the office. Honorable Chair, when we conduct the audit of Eskom, we do it together with our colleagues from Deloitte because we have opted not to audit Eskom, and it is audited by our colleagues from the private sector, being Deloitte. The team today is led by Andre, and then I'm just going to hand over to him with your permission, Chair, so that he can introduce the team that is with him today as they support us in providing the committee with a briefing on the audit outcomes of Eskom. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to hand over to Andre.
Okay, thank you. Andre, over to you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Andre Dennis. I'm a partner with Deloitte. And it's wonderful to meet you all and wishing you all a good 2025. My team with me today is Eric Chabalala. Eric is our advisory partner, and he looks after the relationship side of the audit. I've got with me Mavungu Matulamusa, and Mavungu is responsible for the audit of our PFMA and to make sure the compliance matters are dealt with. And I also have Tanya Magugu with me. Tanya is my Senior Associate Director that works very closely on the group affairs on Eskom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now we know that we are also with Deloitte. Thank you very much for that. And then Secretary.
I'm listening, Chair.
Okay. Is there a backup staff with us? I see our researcher on the platform. Can you introduce quickly the ones that are with us? Even if they don't flight the videos. In fact, they don't open the videos. It's fine. Whoever is going to speak will just put on his or her video when he speaks, but introduce them now. Who's present, who's not.
Thank you, Chair. So we have Lee, who's the Lee Bremo, who's the committee researcher. And then we also have your Liswa Landu, who's the communication specialist for the committee. And then also Vuyokazi Makubalo, who's the committee assistant chair. And I am Ariko Kotsa, the committee secretary for the portfolio committee on electricity and energy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Now we know who is in the meeting and who's not in the meeting. Can we then, the agenda now, we are on the apologies. Are there any apologies from your side, Secretary?
Yeah, as I've indicated, Chair, the only apology we've received was from Mr. Kwankwa, who, due to other work commitments, is unable to attend the meeting this morning, Chair. Those are the apologies received, Chair.
And also the one of Hasina, who is in between the two meetings.
Correct,
Okay.
Chair.
Sure. Then let's go to the adoption of the agenda as it has been put forward.
Chair,
Okay.
Nazir Paulson, I move for the adoption of the agenda.
Sorry,
And,
Chair.
and the apologies as presented.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson. Any seconder?
Chair, it's Honorable Malam here. I did indicate that I had an issue with the agenda that I wish to raise before we adopt it.
What
Chair,
is it?
we have not adopted the program for the first term of the year. Could I ask that the adoption of the program either be put on this agenda at the end or on Friday's agenda for that meeting?
It's going to be put on Friday, but
Okay, it isn't currently there, Chair.
today it was a special day, and we were supposed to have a physical meeting, but we requested that at least it needs to be. Otherwise, there is a program, you are right. Then we'll adopt it, and if we can just have time, and also we thought that Friday is a good day to do it. Thank you very much for reminding us about it. The agenda has been adopted. Any seconder?
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes.
Yes. No, I'm seconding the adoption of the agenda, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The agenda has been adopted by Honorable Paulson and seconded by Honorable Ngosi. Can we then go straight to the business of the day, that is the presentation by the Auditor-General's office? Over to you, leader of the delegation.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Chair. And maybe before we start with the presentation today, Chair, let me just thank the committee for inviting us to brief them on the audit outcomes of Eskom. We really do value an opportunity to engage with the committee and empower the committee in terms of the work that we have done around the Eskom audit. And as we brief the committee, it's maybe also important to indicate that the audit outcomes that we're going to be sharing with yourselves, we have engaged quite extensively on this audit outcomes with the leadership of Eskom through the audit committee, the management, as well as the board. And we've equally also engaged on this audit outcomes with the Minister of Electricity and Energy prior to briefing the committee. So I thought it's just important to highlight the processes that we followed in coming to brief the committee. Having said that, Chair, Eskom remains one of the most critical state-owned entities responsible for ensuring that we've got energy sustainability. And it's important that as we brief the committee, we outline some of the observations that we've seen within this environment of Eskom and how it impacts energy sustainability within the country. Some of the key highlights that we will be sharing with yourselves today relate to the actual performance of Eskom as it relates to its management, its financial management rather, its governance processes, procurement, as well as how it has fared in terms of its delivery on its mandate of ensuring that we've got sustainable electricity. Chair, it is also important for me to also highlight that this engagement for us as the Auditor General is important because it does enable us to fulfill our constitutional mandate in ensuring that there is accountability and oversight. And we hope that the insights that we will share with you today will really indeed assist you in terms of fulfilling your own mandate of enabling accountability and oversight through the work that we'll be presenting to you as part of our audit. We do hope that as we share this insights, that it will assist you, as I've indicated, in terms of your execution of your responsibilities, and that we also appreciate that there is quite a number of stakeholders that are responsible for ensuring that this particular entity actually fulfills its mandate and performs at its optimal performance. And this is one of those, this committee then becomes one of those role players in the accountability ecosystem that we engage as part of saying everybody has a part to play, or every role player has a part to play in ensuring an Eskom that is actually fulfilling on its mandate. And to that extent, we do hope that you recognize the work that we do as being relevant to the work of the committee, and we hope that we will really indeed assist you in terms of ensuring that you fulfill your own mandate. Having said that, Humrani and Andre are going to assist us in terms of the presentation. I'm going to now hand over to Andre, who will then take us through the detail of the overall audit outcomes, and then Pumu will close on the performance management matters as it relates to Eskom. With that, Chair, with your permission, I'll hand over to Andre. Andre, over to you.
Thank you, Madi. Chair, thank you. Shall I continue?
Yes, continue, Andre.
Great, thank you, Chair. So the first page summarizes the audit outcomes overall. I think it's important, if we look at Eskom as a whole, we have highlighted that Eskom continues to submit financial statements for audit which contained material misstatements in multiple account balances and disclosures. And the audit process was used to improve the quality of the financial statements and avoid qualifications in areas over and above PFMA disclosure. I'm going to touch on that a little further in the document later on. And I think it's important that we just talk to that, because I think it is important, because that is the cornerstone of financial control. And you want to ensure that your financial statements are accurately and they are robustly challenged, and that the opinion stacks up. So this is critical from a governance process, but also from a reporting process overall. Then the significant internal control deficiencies resulted in negative audit outcomes. And this has been the case in the last 5 years, and these were not addressed by the accounting authority. The reports of the current and previous auditors over the same period have consistently highlighted material breakdowns in controls over compliance with applicable laws and regulations. That has hindered Eskom's ability to prevent material non-compliance findings, and that resulted in the qualified audit opinions. The commitments made over the years by those charged with governance to address these matters have not materialized due to a lack of accountability and ownership at various levels in the organization, inadequate oversight and monitoring processes, and ineffective consequence management. The lack of group monitoring activities of compliance at the component level results in matters surfacing through the external audit process. Management should proactively evaluate findings by obtaining a thorough understanding of key drivers and audit outcomes, and identify the key areas across the business that require attention. When you look at the table that we've included, you will see that we've highlighted that there are 3 areas. If we go back one slide, please. There are 3 areas where you can see that in the financial statements, there has been very limited movement. There's been no movement in your opinion. You've had qualifications on your financial statements in irregular expenses, fruitless and wasteful, and losses due to criminal conduct in both in all 22, 23, and 24 financial years. There has been some improvement in the generation business that we have noticed, and credit has to go to finance management of generation. but there has been a deterioration in certain of the other components which are highlighted here as well. And then compliance with legislation, I think the pink areas indicate that there are material findings, and they have been consistently highlighted over the last 3 years. And the green indicates that these are areas where we are unqualified with no material issues. So if we move into the detail, the audit on the financial statements, the audit outcomes, 21-22, that's the 22 financial year, it was qualified with findings. 22-23, it was also qualified with findings. 23-24, the same. The reasons for that is on irregular expenditure, it was qualified for completeness and accuracy. And the reasons really relate to inadequate systems of internal control to timely detect and record irregular expenditure, inadequate controls to ensure appropriate assessment of potentially irregular expenditure arising from non-compliant supply chain management processes and various investigation reports, inadequate tracking of forensic report findings, abuse of the deviation processes with related parties, and payments on certain contracts made to parties who are not party to the original agreement. Those are the highlighted areas that relate to irregular expenditure. As it relates to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we qualified on completeness, the reason being inadequate systems of internal control to timelessly detect and record expenditure in the financial statements, inappropriate assessment of possible fruitless and wasteful expenditure logged, and where items were detected, such items were not recorded as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Losses due to criminal conduct, inadequate systems of internal control to timelessly detect and record the losses, and the main area is inventory rework and transfers that were written off as unexplained losses. Those were the 3 areas that resulted in the overall qualification. If we move on to the areas relating to the key audit matters, I think it's important that we highlight that key audit matters are areas where the auditor pays particular attention to the audit, and it is mostly where we identify breakdowns in controls and underlying business processes. And key audit matters are regarded as areas where there might be a higher risk of material misstatement than those where significant management and those where significant management and auditor judgments were involved. So these are the areas where the auditor spent a significant amount of time. Okay. I want to highlight 2 or 3 of these areas. I will touch on, record them all for your information, but I'm going to give you a bit more detail on 2 or 3 of the areas. The impact of the forensic investigation into the illicit creation of prepaid tokens. So this is in your distribution space. We have your prepaid electricity, and this was identified through a audit that management's forensic auditors performed, that there were material control breakdowns in the internal controls and the prepaid IT ecosystem. And these significant control deficiencies identified included inappropriate user access controls, dated systems with lack of available data logs, inadequate backup procedures, and limited understanding of the Eskom staff around the prepaid environment, the hardware, and the relevant systems, talking to the IT architecture there. The system control deficiencies have resulted in an inability to determine the full extent of illicit prepaid tokens created, and furthermore, to assess whether these illicit tokens that were created have been utilized is a manual process, because you have to inspect the meters to assess whether those tokens were utilized. So the reason that this area was quite challenging is effectively due to a lack of information, because not all backup processes were maintained, and we did not have information that ran for the whole year. So it was from October to May 2024 was the area that we could pick up where these illicit tokens were created, and where we could effectively assess that these illicit tokens may have been created for illegal use or inappropriate use. We highlight the areas around valuation of complex financial instruments as well as a key audit matter. The issue there is that it is complex. There are various areas of complex financial instruments and valuations that we have to evaluate. And we make use, and management make use of specialists, and this does take a considerable audit effort. The other area that we highlight to you is primary energy costs and inventory management. And this is, I don't want to call it an evergreen, but this is an area that we have reported on in the past, and it remains a challenge. And it relates to the controls over the weighbridges for the receipt of coal and fuel oil at the plants. It involves the area around the management of consumables, may it be the receipt of consumables, the costing of consumables, and the overall management of consumables. And it also extends to inventory across the Eskom environment. The other area that we highlight that is significant is the material breakdown in internal control over financial reporting and the impact of that on the audit. And here I think it's important to highlight that there were significant challenges experienced due to a lack of control over the financial reporting process. Eskom has exceptional policies and procedures that are documented and articulated in the PCM. The challenge here is that adherence to these control processes and at the component level is an issue, and a significant number of misstatements were identified in the current year and prior periods that required correction in the financial statements. There is a lack of accountability and consequence management in areas where errors, restatements and write-offs occurred, resulting in recurring errors and significant control deficiencies over the last 3 years of our involvement. Furthermore, in the execution of the procedures, we identified significant challenge where the appointment of specialists to assist in critical and complex transactions were not timelessly done, resulting in delays and effectively a parallel process of the auditor and management assessing the judgments and estimates and the conclusions reached. This results in bottlenecks, inadequate challenge by finance management, and the concluding and reporting of their financial information before the audit commences. The result of that is time delays. Similar to the prior period, critical information at the component level is not always shared with those charged with governance and the auditors, and this also results in changes to the planned audit processes. This, together with significant control deficiencies, results in significant group management and audit effort to appropriately address the matters. The qualification really was the main areas the qualification related to was property, plant and equipment, intangibles, investments and subsidiaries, future fuel supplies, the deferred tax, the loans receivable, inventory, embedded derivatives, lease liabilities, trade and other receivables, payments received in advance, contract liabilities and deferred income, impairment of financial assets, income taxes, and notes relating to the disclosure of going concern, critical accounting estimates, and assumptions of financial risk management. Those are the items I wanted to give you more detail on. There are obviously other areas that we also highlighted, which include the valuation of compensation events relating to the megabuild projects, and the impairment of property, plant and equipment, and indefinite useful life assets as key audit matter areas. I've also been asked to deal with the matters relating to the reports for the irregularities before I hand over to my colleague Funilani to deal with the performance matters. Now, reportable irregularity is for an external auditor is an area that we assess compliance with laws and regulations. And where non-compliances are identified, we have to evaluate the impact of each non-compliance on the financial statements and respond in terms of the responsibility to report unlawful and relevant to the relevant authorities in line with Section 45 of the Audit Professions Act. The reportable irregularities for the year included a list of 7 items. The first two relate to non-compliance with environmental laws and regulations. These were reported from 2021 to 24 and relate to the National Environmental Act Air Quality and also to the NEMA Act, which is the Water Act. The next area relates to the backlog in forensic cases. This results in a breach of Section 33(1)(2) of the Treasury regulations, which results in the accounting authority not being in a position to confirm that all relevant matters are reported in terms of Section 34(1) of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act 12 of 2004, better referred to as PRECA. This was reported in 2022, 23, and 24. We also then highlight the area that certain financial records are not complete and accurately maintained in terms of the PFMA requirements, and that there is inadequate management action to address PFMA disclosure deficiencies and multiple PFMA non-compliances. And this was reported in 22, 23, and 24 as well. There are various breaches that we've identified, and the breach relating to Section 51(1)(e)(3) of the PFMA relates to delays in investigations into instances of irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure to determine if disciplinary steps needed to be taken against liable officials, as well as taking the required disciplinary action against officials who made or permitted irregular or fruitless and wasteful expenditure based on the outcomes of the investigations conducted. We reported the same matter in 2022, 23, and 24. The other area that I wanted to highlight is the issue around the fiduciary responsibility to maintain registers that are accurate and complete, and this is around the reporting of their financial statements in terms of National Treasury regulations, and I've highlighted the significant number of adjustments and audit errors that were identified in the process, and that resulted in us issuing this reportable irregularity as well, and we issued this in 22, 23, and 24. And then in this past year, we also issued a reportable irregularity in the transmission and distribution divisions or components resulting from large power purchase agreements where the appropriate delegation of authority, although that was there, the necessary agreements had not been entered into for specific power purchase agreements in line with what is required in terms of those arrangements. So that is the areas that I was asked to cover. I think we will open it to question once Fumalani has taken you through the remainder of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, if I can then continue with the rest of the presentation, and thank you, Andra. Now, as we move into performance reporting or performance in the context of the mandate of the entity, the first thing that we look at is the performance or the policy context within which Eskom is operating. You'll remember that the medium-term strategic framework set strategic targets or priorities that government wanted to achieve by 2024. And the first one, as it relates to energy, was that the energy availability factor from the generation plants was going to be 80%, which means that of the capacity that we have installed, 80% of that will be able to get 80% of electricity from those. However, Eskom only achieved 54.4% EAF for the year ended 23-24. And what is also worth noting with regard to that is that as far as while the MTSF set a target of 80%, the Eskom target internally, according to the strategic plan, was 65%. That means they were setting a target that is even much lower than what the MTSF's target has set. And even that lower target was not achieved. So this is for the year ended 31 March 2024. We do note that post year end, from March last year, there have been no load shedding up to now. However, this starts are showing the period ending March 2024, which indicated that there were significant number of days with load shedding, which was about 329 days of load shedding in the whole year. That also meant that another target that was set.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Chair. Can I continue? Am I audible?
Continue.
Okay, thank you. Another target that was set was a target to increase the reserve margin. So government said of the 80%, we need to also make that 15% is available for maintenance. That means it's a capacity that will be removed from the grid for maintenance without affecting the available electricity to the users. That could not be achieved because there was shortage of electricity due to the lower EAF. Another one was that there was a target set that for 2024, there will be 1,000 megawatts of electricity that is commissioned from embedded generation. This particular target was not particularly measured at a department level. So this is not a Eskom thing. It's a department, DMRE at the policy department. These are the guys who will then procure additional capacity from the IPPs and all those things. This particular target was not appropriately measured. In fact, the department, instead of measuring the 1,000 megawatts being commissioned, they measured themselves against the issuing of RFPs, request for proposals. So which we then said, issuing an RFP does not ensure that electricity has been added to the grid. The target that was set for MTSF, which was eventually achieved, was the unbundling of transmission, which is the legal separation of the transmission business into a new company, as it's known as the National Transmission Company of South Africa. So this one was achieved by 31 March 2024. We note that. It's also worth noting that due to these challenges that are marked in red, there was extensive use of what we call the open cycle gas turbines. This is the diesel generators to produce electricity. The target was that, in the previous year, Eskom used about 14.3% of the electricity was coming from these gas turbines. In the current year, the year under review, 2024, that increased 17%. So there was extensive use of open gas turbines. And another problem was also that what we call the post-philosophy outage unplanned capacity factor. This measures the percentage of plants that it goes on maintenance, and then after maintenance, they trip again. So basically 31.6% of those were tripping after maintenance. So it spoke to the quality of the maintenance that was undertaken during that particular financial year. However, Chair, while we noted all these weaknesses that happened in 2024, the indication of the continuous days of 300 days of no load shedding indicates that in the 24-25, we may be expecting improved reporting around the plant performance for Eskom. Then when we go to their own performance report, as Andre indicated, there were material misstatements that were reported on the performance report. So basically, they indicate that there are two KPIs that are reported and could not be relied upon. Sorry, no, one was reported and could not be relied upon, and one was missing. So for finance, the Eskom had set a target that they are going to save 22.4 billion rand from turnaround initiatives. They reported that they only managed to save 9.9 billion rand. However, what's worth noting from the audit point of view is that of that 9.9 billion rand that they reported, 1.3 billion rand cannot be relied upon because the baseline that was used in measuring that could not be substantiated by the audit process. So basically, 9.9 billion rand has been reported. Auditor says 1.3 billion of that we cannot substantiate it. Distribution, the Eskom business has got a mandate to expand and maintain their distribution infrastructure and also to modernize it in line with the demand from the distribution point of view. In this that we expected them just were missing. So basically from the performance planning, they did not include indicators that will measure themselves on how well are they doing in improving, maintaining, and expanding the distribution infrastructure. Worth noting is a very important measure of conversion of postpaid electricity infrastructure, the old one, to prepaid, which is going to be one of the key measure in terms of dealing with theft of electricity and sorry, not theft, but failure to collect electricity that has been delivered. So this is the part around the reporting, performance reporting. So then move into compliance. Again, Andre indicated that this is another area that Eskom has been struggling a lot over the past 5 years to deal with the compliance with laws and regulation. There are four major areas of compliance that they've been managed to address. First one is the financial statements, where, as Andre indicated, that the financial statements that were provided for auditing were not of good quality. There were multiple areas that the auditee relied on the audit process to improve the quality of the financial statements. This is a non-compliance because the PFMA and the Companies Act are clear that the board ought to submit for auditing financial statements that are free from material misstatements and that are supported by adequate records. That was not the case with Eskom. So hence it's the non-compliance. Revenue management is another big area, as it also links with the viability of the entities that Eskom continues to fail to recover revenue that has been billed to municipalities and also some small power users. This one was specifically relating to the Soweto residents. And also in the current year, what's unique was also that there was an agreement with one of the large power users that was not signed on time to enable Eskom to be able to collect the money for the electricity that was delivered for that particular user. Contract management remains a big problem from areas that links with the economical utilization of resources, lack of documents to support the procurement transition that were undertaken, and mistakes and errors in the allocation of points that will determine who is the winning bidder. So those are the multiple areas around procurement that were not in maternal compliance. And lastly, what I want to also highlight is the area of consequence management, in that Eskom has been painted as an environment that lacks in adequate consequence management and adequate accountability. Continuous irregular expenditures, continuous fruitless expenditure that does not get investigated on time and that lacks in disciplinary actions and consequences being implemented to those who are reliable, who are responsible or reliable for that. So that's then the area that has been reported as a area of non-compliance. Andre has already dealt with the reportable irregularities. Moving into going concern, an area that I'll also spend a bit of time on it. Sorry about that. So an audit also assesses whether an entity is a going concern. By this, we're looking at whether the entity will be able to meet its debts and liabilities as they become due in the foreseeable future. And at least we look into the next 12 months. Is this entity going to be a going concern entity? And the answer from the audit process was yes, Eskom is a going concern. However, there are material risks or material uncertainties which can affect that particular going concern status. And these are listed here under the area that is under the column that says key viability risks. Eskom has also went on in their financial statements have disclosed what are the key strategies that they are going to implement to address this particular risk. So just dealing with the risks that affect Eskom's ability to continue going concern, or that could, as reported, there are continuous losses. In the current year, they reported 57 billion rand worth of operating losses. The current liabilities continue to exceed current assets by 50 billion rand. The entity continues to be reliant on long-term debt to manage their liquidity position, and with continued support from government in the form of government guarantees and also the Eskom debt relief program that was approved by the Minister of Finance. There is the extent of Eskom's capital requirements, they are continuing to increase, and also they are going to continue to increase with the planned expansion on the a grid expansion program. So this will need more money to be able to be funded. The uncertainty around the application for the multi-year price determination with NERSA, because part of it was that the Eskom is reliant on the application that they've made to say there need to be price increases for them to generate the revenue that they need. Uncertainty around that also affects Eskom. The continuous municipal debt, the continual increase on municipal debt also is a challenge, and that continues to deteriorate even with the implementation of the Eskom municipal debt relief program, which has given opportunity for some municipalities to get their debt to be written off under certain conditions. Multiple municipalities that are part of that program are not complying with that program, so that program is at risk currently. We also noted that the Eskom's viability is also dependent on continuous improvement on the generation performance. So basically, stability of the grid, so stability of the generation plants is also a key factor on the future of Eskom. And lastly, the electricity losses. So Eskom is suffering significant losses of electricity, both from infrastructure that's not reliable and also from theft of electricity through multiple means. So those are the risks that are affecting the viability of Eskom. How is Eskom addressing those ones? They indicate that there's continuous engagements with the National Treasury and the shareholder to develop a long-term strategy that will optimize the balance sheet of the entity. That will make sure that Eskom is attractive to the funders out there. Also, Eskom is continuing to work with the National Treasury, again with the shareholder, to monitor and improve on the compliance with the debt relief program. This is the program that will then ensure that the part of Eskom's long-term liabilities are converted into equity, thereby improving the company's balance sheet. The various strategies that they continue to implement to recover debt, that is a challenge that they continue to experience. The continuous leveraging on the crisis committee to support Eskom in implementation of the electricity action plan. That we have seen the improvement on the generation performance. That is another strategy that they continue to implement. And then looking at the continuous revision of the cost structure so that they can plan, so that they can save on the costs as part of their turnaround initiatives. And lastly, they will indicate that they will only engage on large capital projects with approval of National Treasury and the shareholder. So those are the strategies that they're implementing. And we have noted some risks, some of those strategies. The first one with regard to the turnaround plan. The turnaround plan itself, which also informs the corporate plan, has got a pillar that it's named improved finance. And some of the initiatives around there, they include reduction of cost, revenue, increasing revenue, and the reduction of municipal debt. And we've got some risks that we have observed that can affect the Eskom's ability to achieve their targets or their objective as far as it relates to those particular initiatives. Firstly, starting with the reduction of costs. As we indicated from the performance reporting was that initially for 2024, they planned to save 22 billion rand. They only managed to save 9.9 billion rand. In the 24-25, they plan to save roughly just below 5 billion rand and also 5 billion rand in another year. We have indicated that the current and the historical audits of Eskom has noted that Eskom does not have appropriate systems, processes, and controls to quantify irregular expenditure, as well as losses due to criminal conduct. So basically, these losses that they are struggling to quantify, we are going to be a continuous significant drain that will cause Eskom to continue to lose money. So basically, whatever they may say they have saved from the terrorist initiatives, they will lose it through this particular undesirable expenditures. Around the area of increasing revenue, there are two initiatives that links to that. The first one is the dependency on the NERSA tariff determination. We noted that the NDP envisaged, the National Development Plan, envisaged electricity supply that is a public function and that is socially equitable and accessible to all South Africans through affordable tariffs. So when we are looking at the application and the future of tariffs, we are noting a risk around, while Eskom may get tariffs that can give them the revenue that they need, the tariffs may end up not being affordable for majority of South Africans. And that lack of affordability may further fuel demand for illegal electricity connections. And we've noted from the co-audit matters that underrepresented that environment within Eskom also enables the creation of those illegal sales of prepaid electricity tokens. So basically, the pressure on the public, enabled by the weaknesses within Eskom, may end up fueling significant losses to Eskom through electricity that gets generated, but Eskom cannot bill for it because it gets stolen. In that regard, we are also indicating that there's therefore a need to strengthen the implementation of government initiatives or measures that are aimed at protecting the poor. So basically, we're saying, while we're looking at the trajectory of electricity tariffs, that needs to be made with how well are we doing in terms of implementing measures that the poor get cushioned from this above inflation tariff increases. And in this regard, we're linking with our audits of municipalities. Our audits of municipalities have noted that the indigent policies, which are meant to protect the poor through access to free basic services, are being abused. We have identified instances where municipalities where households that receive free basic services, despite not meeting the criteria set by the municipalities, there are people who are registered in those indigent registers that are employed by government institutions or employed and earning a salary that is above the threshold. And some municipalities don't even have control to measure or to monitor how much the indigent household are using in line with the limit that have been set by their policies. So that's why we're highlighting this thing to say, as far as the protection of the poor, there need to be improvement around municipalities being able to monitor their indigent registers or indigent policies. Reduction of municipal debt being another pillar that is a viability pillar for Eskom. We note that it remains a bigger significant viability risk other than debt service costs to Eskom. As we have indicated, one of the non-compliance areas that Eskom has suffered is around lack of effective and appropriate steps to collect revenue that's due from municipalities. Worth noting is that as at end of March 2024, Eskom was owed about 86 billion rand by municipalities. And there are some significant factors that may hinder the recoverability of that 86 billion rand. As indicated, that we've indicated also in Eskom is reported in the data report that majority of municipalities that are in the debt relief program don't comply with that debt relief program. So most of them are municipalities that owe that 86 billion rand, that they've been given a leeway by National Treasury to say, we're going to write off some of your debt if you do the following. They're not complying with that. So the program is at risk. Secondly, of the 86 billion rand, 45 billion is owed by municipalities that COCTA has classified them as dysfunctional municipalities. And here we're looking at municipalities that are characterized by instability in council, characterized by poor governance, poor administration, poor financial management, and failure to manage service delivery. So basically, these are municipalities that when you look at them, if there's not any improvement on their dysfunctional state, their likelihood of them paying Eskom is rand, it's very remote. And of the 34 billion, of the 34 of these municipalities, 32 are on that debt relief program. Now we know why the debt relief program is not succeeding, because 32 municipalities that are part of that program are dysfunctional. So therefore, the chances of them implementing measures that's going to enable them to comply with the program is very remote. So we therefore indicate that the increasing municipal debt shows that municipalities are struggling to collect electricity revenue from their customers. Again, linking with the findings from our audit of municipalities, we have noted that municipalities lost revenue because they were not billing and collecting revenue. So Eskom is supplying municipalities with electricity. Municipalities supply to the customers, but the municipalities don't have control to bill for that revenue, for that electricity. So they don't even have the money for that electricity to be able to pay Eskom. There are significant losses at municipalities, and mostly because of neglected infrastructure at municipalities. So with that, we are saying increasing tariffs, NERSA tariffs, without addressing the weaknesses within Eskom and municipalities' distribution infrastructure will therefore not address Eskom's viability challenges. We will likely see an Eskom that is producing electricity, but that electricity is being stolen, is being lost through weakened distribution infrastructure. In conclusion, we are indicating that audit outcomes showed that there is very little progress in implementing recommendations made by the auditors over the years to address underlying root causes within Eskom. The board has a responsibility to build an entity that is characterized by a culture of performance, accountability, transparency, and institutional integrity, which will ultimately result in sustainable delivery against the mandate. So while we are noting that Eskom is not the only key role player in the energy value chain, its role is the most critical one in the ecosystem as a producer and supplier of electricity. Historical performance, as reported in the data report, shows that generation has continued to underperform during the 23-24 financial year. However, we note the post-year end improvement due to the improvement on the generation recovery plan, which is currently bearing fruits. So here we're just indicating that what are the factors that the board needs to look at in order to be able to improve a culture that is high performance. They need to look at performance, they need to look at accountability, then look at transparency, and look at integrity. So these are the areas that they need to be focusing on as they are changing the culture within the entity. We made some root causes to the board of Eskom. I will not go through those ones in detail, but I want to focus on the recommendations that we are making to the portfolio committee, noting that the portfolio committee is a key role player in strengthening the accountability ecosystem and enabling the culture that we want to see within Eskom, as Madidimalo indicated at the opening remarks. So we're proposing that the portfolio committee needs to monitor and follow up with the executive authority and the accounting authority of Eskom, or the board of Eskom, on the following areas. One, measures that they have implemented to address the matters identified from the audit, in addition to matters that the committee could raise themselves. Secondly, the progress that they would have made on strategic initiatives as per the strategic turnaround plan and their corporate plan, as well as risk identified by dependencies outside Eskom. And then finally, progress made by the board in addressing the reportable irregularities that Andre took us through. So let me pause here, Chair, and then hand over back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, AG or Deloitte. Can we then check who's going to follow after that?
We are done with our presentation, Chair.
Who's that?
It's Umran again. We are done with our presentation. The AG presentation is done.
All right. All right, carry on.
We're done with the presentation. I think now it would be an opportune time to reflections from the committee and any questions that the committee may have on the presentation that we've just made. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Honorable members, over to you. The presentation has been finished and it's done. And whoever wants to have a bite is free to do that. I'm giving over to you.
Jay, I'll go first. Chair? Chairperson?
Hello, it's Honorable Nazir first,
Okay.
and then followed by Honorable Tring, and then by Kevin. So far, so good. Those are the hands that I've identified. Over to you, Nazir.
My hand is up, Chair.
Yes, I
came
can
afterwards. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Dennis and colleagues. Chairperson, I think it's actually I think Deloitte have done a thorough job and has given us a lot of insight into the problems at Eskom. But I just wanted to know, what were the reasons for outsourcing Eskom's audit to Deloitte, and I'd like to know if there are any other entities within government where we outsource the audit, whether it's to Deloitte or to someone else. And I'd like to know, when it comes to the irregular expenditure, were they also able to determine who was responsible for what could potentially be criminal activity? And because, Chairperson, we can't have criminals running amok in Eskom with gay abandon and we fold our arms. We need to know who they are. We need to follow up on consequence management, where there's been any prosecution. And if there's been any prosecution, what have we done to recover the money that was stolen? I would also like to know, in terms of the illicit prepaid tokens that were generated by the system, what is the value of those prepaid tokens? Because, even there, I don't think it's possible for that any system where you generate something of value does not have an audit trail, and we cannot determine who generated those prepaid tokens. And also, when it comes to the lack of adherence to internal controls, I'd like to know if it's a lack of knowledge of those controls, or if it's just deliberately ignoring those control measures that were put in place. So when Deloitte reports, when Deloitte reports on an irregularity that has taken place, including identifying the culprit over the past 3 years, how many of those involved in irregularities have been reported? And in terms of outcomes, how many were successfully prosecuted? And what have we done to recover the money that we lost? And also, we speak about the uncollected revenue. Now, we all know that the 53 units to indigent people is very little. And I think, 53 units should be for every citizen in this country. And those who are indigent should get 100 to 153 units, and it would help stimulate or prevent the criminal activity that's taking place, the illicit tokens that's being printed, mean, if you go and look on social media, they advertise 400 units for 1,000 rand. Very good bargain. So I suppose if you're going to also reduce the cost of units and make it still profitable, I mean, Eskom isn't there to generate profits, it must basically break even. So if we reduce the cost of units, it also eliminates that, or it reduces the opportunity for criminal activity. People print prepaid tokens illegally because the cost of electricity is high. So we need to have a look at that. And you know, and I think, Chair, this audit report gives us an idea as to how Eskom should be treated for the rest of the year in terms of what they're going to do to address the myriad of challenges that they are facing as an entity. Thank you very much.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. The next one I said it's Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, firstly, also let me appreciate thank the Auditor General and the external auditors of Deloitte for a job which I believe is well done. So while albeit late due to Eskom's inability to submit their financials on time, but when reading the report, Chair, it's sufficient to cause one's blood to boil. It's sufficient to cause one to become angry in a sense. I believe that if Mother Teresa were alive, this report also would cause her to become angry. Because when looking at the overall audit outcomes, we see that there's only one improvement compared to the previous 5 years, and only 3 areas, but in addition to that one improvement, 3 areas of deterioration, namely distribution, finance, oversight, and governance. And these are key areas where there's deteriorations in performance. The qualified with findings outcome has also caused the Auditor General to conclude that, and I think that this is damning, has caused the Auditor General to conclude that the cost of primary energy could be much lower if the losses from criminal conduct, irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful spending could be eliminated. And I think that this is a telling statement, but also I think a statement which reveals the real challenges that Eskom has been unable to overcome over the last few years. There's also been a list of inadequacies and contraventions of the National Environment Management Act, the PFMA, Public Finance Management Act, supply chain processes, and systems of internal controls to prevent irregular expenditure, fruitless, wasteful expenditure, and losses due to criminal conduct. But of great concern is the finding of material breakdowns of internal controls, particularly with regards to the IT ecosystem, enabling Eskom staff or officials to create illicit, usable prepaid tokens. How is this possible in an IT advanced systems that are with IT advanced systems that are available, with artificial intelligence programs that are available, with certain advanced technology that is available? How is it still possible that officials are able to generate illicit electricity tokens, costing Eskom? One doesn't even know how to quantify it. Again, Chair, Eskom has been unable to meet its KPIs, achieving only 17 of the 40 KPIs, or 42.5% of its targets, and it has failed to meet its targets of the 80% energy availability factor, as a consequence, unable to increase its electricity reserve margins to 15%, and has failed to achieve the additional 1,000 megawatts by 2024. Clearly, Eskom has been unable also to effect consequence management. And I think, Chair, there's a concern here that whether Eskom actually is a going concern, where you have liabilities currently according to the Auditor-General, where you have liabilities that exceeds assets by 50 billion. You're within the private sector, this would speak of an entity that is essentially bankrupt. But it's clear that where Eskom is, it's an entity teetering on the brink of bankruptcy if the interventions and the recommendations over the last few years that have been requested by the Auditor-General, if these are not implemented, then we could see indeed that Eskom would indeed go into a bankrupt state. The inability, Chair, and I want to just perhaps now to look at concluding, the inability of the Eskom board to stem the losses incurred over the last 5 years is treasonous. And the reason why I say it's treasonous is because it is the lives of South Africans that have been put at risk. But not only the lives, but also the livelihoods of South Africans. And the Eskom inefficiencies have hammered our economy, resulting in the loss of billions of rands over the last few years. And Chair, we appreciate the fact that in terms of there have been some improvements in terms of and the fact that the lights have been kept on for the last few months, and that must be appreciated. But Chair, if the recommendations of the Auditor-General are adhered to and implemented, we are going to see continued losses, which ultimately affects the public and the family of South Africa. And so these inefficiencies have hammered our economy, have contributed to increased unemployment, poverty, and inequality, and is currently possibly one of the greatest risks to our economy and the families of South Africa. The inefficiencies, the incompetence, and the inability to address the recommendations of the Auditor-General over the years just serves to increase the pain and the suffering of South Africans. Eskom now turns to again punish South Africans with their request to NERSA of over some 40% tariff increases because of their inability to stem the losses internally, which the Auditor-General has indicated has contributed to increased costs because of these inefficiencies, increased electricity costs because of their inefficiencies. Chair, I would like to recommend that we have quarterly updates, that this committee has quarterly updates where Eskom and the board of Eskom reports to this committee quarterly in terms of the implementation of internal audit controls and what consequence management actions have been taken to ensure that officials and those found to be corrupt and negligent in their duty are held accountable. And then finally, Chair, I just would like to ask the Auditor-General, the team from the Auditor-General's office, whether the newfound powers that the Auditor-General has to hold accounting officers and officials criminally liable for breaches that have been found, whether the Auditor-General has exercised any of these newfound powers that they have. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I proceed?
Yes, you can proceed, Honorable Milo.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the AG and Deloitte for a very informative presentation. At this point, let me say that a lot of the comments, and I by and large agree with the comments of my colleagues, but I do think that we're addressing them to the wrong people, because I don't think there's anyone from Eskom on this meeting at the moment, and the opportune time to address many of these issues would be with Eskom. That said, perhaps a few questions for the AG and Deloitte, and I'm not sure who would be in a better position to answer them. But let me start with this. We're well aware of the fact that this is, I think, the third year that Eskom has submitted its annual report and its annual financial statements to Parliament late. And my question is, what is the role of the auditors in that late submission? Has it been a delay on the part of the auditors, or has it been a delay on the part of Eskom? And if so, what is being done to address that delay going forward? Then, you know, there's an identification in the overall audit outcomes that the commitments made over a number of years by Eskom and those charged with government and charged with governance, and we need to include the executive in that, have not materialized. And so the question is, what is the role of the AG? Do you interact with Eskom's board? Do you interact with Eskom's management? Do you interact with the minister and the department on a regular basis and say, hey, these issues that we identified during the audit process, they're not being addressed? Or is it only something that you do on an annual basis when you do the audit? Is there ongoing consultation, ongoing interaction in that regard? I want to 100% agree with Honorable Thring and with the comment in the AG's report that the qualified audit opinion implies that the cost of primary energy could be much lower if Eskom was doing its job and overseeing its finances properly. And I think that's a very, very telling finding that you have made there. Just on your performance reporting, on slide 8, under finance, it says savings from turnaround activities, a target of 22.4 billion and an actual saving of 9.9 billion. But the audit finding is the part that interests me. It says the auditors could not verify a portion of the reported achievement, 1.3 billion, relating to costs incurred on uncontracted coal, as they were to substantiate the estimates and judgments applied in management's estimation of the baseline. I don't know what the last half of that sentence actually means. I can't pass that sentence to actually make sense. So could I get an explanation of what you mean by as they were to substantiate the estimates and judgments applied in management's estimation of the baseline? I just don't understand what you mean by that. Then I have a real concern about the procurement and contract management processes at Eskom, and there are multiple examples of irregularities in that regard on slides 10 and onwards. My question is, who is ultimately responsible for ensuring that those matters are dealt with appropriately? Does Eskom's internal audit report on them? Do they interact with the Eskom board? And is the Eskom board taking responsibility for ensuring that supply chain management, contract management, and procurement are dealt with appropriately? A lot of the questions I have are for Eskom. One last question, and Honorable Thring raised the point of the going concern and the viability, and he pointed out that current liabilities exceed current assets by about 50 billion rand. Obviously, this is a massive, massive concern. But the question I have is this: what is the and in your key viability risks at the second last bullet point, you identify the going concern assumption remains fully dependent on the ongoing positive and incremental impact of the generation recovery program. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that the current situation of going concern is more dependent on state bailout, on ongoing state bailout. Now, would you care to comment on that rather than or as it pertains to Eskom's going concern status? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Malem. Then there's hand of Honorable Bapti and also Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Deloitte for the report, as disturbing as it is. What we are seeing is that the audit performance is not improving. Anything, it's gone backwards, bearing in mind, of course, that that's up until last year, the end of March. But I'm cognizant of the fact that we're talking here to the auditors and not to Eskom. So I'm going to direct my questions, my queries to them specifically. On page 4, under the financials, it refers to abuse of deviation process with a related party. Do we know who that party is? Do you have that information available? And then inadequate controls to detect and record fruitless and wasteful expenditure. My question here is, have these now been correctly recorded in the financials? On page 5, valuation of compensation events, provisions relating to mega build projects. And again, do you have the information to say which projects those are? And then on pages 10 and 11, under the financial compliance, some contracts and quotes were awarded to bidders that did not score the highest points, tenders for contracts above 30 million, and specifically coal contracts of some 16 billion did not have evidence of subcontracting agreements. And my question here is, was any form of justification or explanation rendered by Eskom, and if so, what was it? And then I have two very main important questions, partly covered by our colleague, Honourable Malem. The first one is about key viability risks and Eskom as a going concern. Now, the conclusion that the Auditor-General reaches is that Eskom is a going concern, and that is despite all the large operating losses, the negative liquidity, the high capital demands that still have to be met, growing debtors book, high electricity losses, etc. And we know that Eskom has the luxury of relying on bailouts if it fails. But my question to the auditors is that if Eskom were not a publicly owned company that could not have that luxury, would their conclusion still be that Eskom is viable? My own view is that Eskom is actually non-viable today. And one of the major factors is that of revenue collection related mainly to municipalities. But that's a different issue. The municipalities must sort themselves out. Eskom has to make sure it collects its revenue, and that's where it's failing spectacularly. And I don't think enough's being done there, because if any company is not receiving money for the goods it supplies, it simply cannot continue to exist. And what happens is then the future generations end up paying. The other question I have, or issue matter I have to put to the auditors is, they made recommendations to the Portfolio Committee, for which I say thank you, because I think they're very good recommendations. But there's one further recommendation I would like to hear their views on, the opinion. The National Electricity Crisis Committee reports directly to the President, and it says that the NECC must work with the Minister to implement the EAP. Now, given that the Portfolio Committee have no knowledge, understanding, insight into what the NECC is doing and how the President or the Minister may be responding, could that not also be a recommendation that what happens at NECC level and the communication that goes back and forth, and more important, what comes out of those communications, that a report comes to the Portfolio Committee so that they're aware of how the NECC is impacting on Eskom's performance? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Nkosi, thank you, Honorable Bapti.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Chair, I appreciate the report and welcome the report by AG and Deloitte. I know the report we have waited for long, and finally it's here. We are actually welcoming it. What I wanted to check, Chair, is there any audit that is still continuing at the institution, Eskom premises, or is the audit complete? Is this the final report, or there is still a report that we are going to get? That is what I wanted to check first. Number two, Chair, when we look at irregular expenditure, as per the presentation, AG says there are payments that were made to certain contracts who are not part of the original contract. Does that mean there were payments made to companies with no contract to Eskom at all? Just want to check that, because if that is true, that is no longer just irregular expenditure, that is criminality. And I wanted to check with AG if are they able to open criminal cases if there is criminality involved, maybe as part of trying to resolve some of the issues. Also, Chair, I wanted to check in terms of with AG deviations. AG says there is abuse of deviation processes. Does that mean there are deviations that were made unnecessary or without any agency? I just wanted to check that, Chair. AG also says there are recommendations that AG does always, and those recommendations are not implemented. I want to check with AG as well what other measures that can be taken as to improve accountability within the institution. What maybe measures can be used to foster stricter enforcement of compliance protocols? What we can do maybe to assist in that, because that is the only way maybe to be able to assist the institution if recommendations are made and are implemented. But if they are not implemented, those recommendations, then we're not going to go anywhere. That is one of the questions I wanted to also check, Chair. And also in terms of auditing, I will also maybe like maybe AG to maybe try to audit in terms of real-time assessment rather than just respective evaluations. Just have immediate identification of issues and strictly have facilitation of timelessly interventions, like be able to give them time that this recommendation that we give, it must be completed by this time. I think those are the few questions that I have, Chair. Thank you. But most of the things I think we'll be able to engage with Eskom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngosi. And knowing that Honorable Mfugeng is in the meeting with us, the only thing she couldn't open the video by the time we're doing introduction. I just want to check, Honorable Mfugeng, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to honorable members. Chairperson, I also welcome and appreciate the report. Chairperson, I only have two questions on this report. On procurement and contract management, Chairperson, we know that there should be rules and regulations in place to ensure that contracts and quotations are awarded in accordance with the legislative requirements. Are these processes monitored? And my second question, Chairperson, will be what penalties are there and exercised to assure that proper and fair processes are implemented in the procurement stages, Chairperson? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mfugeng. Honorable Fasia.
Hi, Chairperson. Thank you very much. Let me also start by appreciating the Auditor-General and the time that's been taken, along with Deloitte, to prepare the audit. I think we're all on the same page about the late nature of it, and we don't blame the AG at all. It's just some issues which I'm about to speak to dealing with the internal controls and issues within Eskom. So I thought I'll just start with that. And of course, on Friday, when we meet with Eskom, we'll be pushing them quite hard. I think it's quite clear that given how or the outcomes that have come through in this particular report, the internal controls are quite weak. And I think this speaks to a much greater governance issue. And I mentioned it in our meeting before we closed for recess in December, that while on a technical side, we're managing to get Eskom back on its feet, of course, it's a long process and it will take time. The reality is we need to also be putting in a lot of focus into greater governance that needs to be addressed. I'm also looking at in detail some of the work that's been put forward today about the municipal debt crisis and the illegal electricity tokens. I think we really need to look at that. It's a real big Achilles heel for Eskom. And I think it was, apart from it currently considered or potentially considered as a going concern in terms of the requirements, I think there is some positive that can come out of it if we're able to turn that around. But the reality is we can't rely only on municipal debt repayment. So that is quite a concern. I think we need to look at very specific some of those interventions that have been put across, because if you look at the report that's been tabled to us today, a lot of those internal consequence management issues have not been addressed. So they say that they've been doing it, and of course any department will come and say to us, oh, we've done internal consequence management, but the reality is on the ground and in actual practice, this hasn't been the case. And I think, Chair, we need to look at that going forward. And then the last thing I wanted to speak to, it's not necessarily an AG issue, but I am interested if there are ways in which we can, in the long run, with the AG's information and the knowledge that's coming out of these various audits, both financial and non-financial, about whether we can blacklist suppliers who fail to deliver. Now, I know National Treasury is doing some work around this, but I do wonder if we could use the AG as well, which is a more neutral body, to say XYZ companies have taken money from government, have failed to deliver. Apart from the companies being blacklisted, we almost need a database to say Director X, Y, and Z with ID numbers, whatever, should not be doing business with government. Because we know what happens, right? If company X fails and is blacklisted, the same directors go and they start company Y, and they continue to try and tender with government, or what they do is they tender with government in one province and then move to another. And we really need to address this, because there's clearly systemic issues here. There are mafias and syndicates that are trying to take advantage of the process. And I would be very interested to know in what the AG could do in providing us, even if it's just the ammunition needed for us to close them down, but more importantly, and I know it's a law enforcement issue, but more importantly, what kind of capacity and resources we could do or we could get from the AG in some shape or form, so that we also sharpen our processes, both internally and externally. With that, Chair, the other points I have really are towards Eskom. I think we need to bring down the hammer a little bit, but that will be on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Fasil. AG and Deloitte, are you ready to respond? I think these questions are enough.
Sorry, Chair, Mr. Mbakas raised also his hand, Chair.
Okay. Excuse me, Honorable Mbati. Honorable Mbata, over to you. Maybe it's the issue of network. He's not in the platform. I don't see him. I don't even see his hand.
He is on the platform, Chair. Moses' iPad.
iPad.
Moses' iPad. There he is, Chair.
Oh,
he must unmute.
Okay, yeah. I see him. Moses. Okay, let's give
Can you hear me, Chair, now?
Okay. Over
Can
to
you hear
you.
me now?
Yes.
Okay. Chair, my question is, having heard what Deloitte was saying, it looks like for the past 4 years, there have been intervening bad experiences with Eskom. As you can hear also the results of those audits, it looks like Eskom do not even have what is called an internal audit department, because that is the department that between the audit committee and the management committee of Eskom, or the executive of Eskom, that is the department that every day it must actually make sure that everybody complies, from whatever group CEO, general managers, right to the last acting manager. Now, some of the experiences that are being shared here with us do not or are not supposed to exist in an organization that is 40-something years. For instance, paying suppliers who are not part of your contract, and basically paying suppliers whom we have no business in paying. That is the general rule in managing contracts. You pay according to contract, and you pay according to the allowable tranches according to the contract. You can't overpay, you can't underpay. And also, having heard what they're actually about, it looks like we also have a criminal inside Eskom who consistently does all the things that mismanage and actually make sure that it affects the credit abilities of Eskom. For instance, the duplication of the coupons, which are used to effect availability of electricity. That can only be done by either a subcontractor or a supplier, or one of the technical artisan staff members who knows how these coupons are actually done. And without that, there is no one who may have access to the design and the authorization. The sequencing of these numbers is very strict, Chairperson. The fact that it's making millions and thousands of rands to individuals, it points to internal advice or internal operators inside Eskom. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Mbata. I think honorable members has said a lot. But what I would love to say to AG and Deloitte, Eskom needs a thorough investigation on these issues that have been tabled. But nevertheless, we will have the meeting with them on Friday. I'm happy that other honorable members are really taking into note that all other questions we have to pose them to Eskom rather than to yourselves. The only thing that you are doing to us, you are making us aware of what is it that is taking place. But I think there are relevant questions that have been posed by members, which Deloitte and also AG can also advise and assist on them. Fraudulent organic fraud is rife in Eskom. Imagine when they double do the coupons, which is clearly. And that is exactly what is happening. And you can see and find out that this is an internal job. Otherwise, the reality is that okay, let me give over to you rather than to comment. AG?
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, for the valuable insights that you've shared with us. And I think I want to appreciate all of the comments that we've received, because I think, as we said in the beginning when we were doing this presentation, there are various accountability ecosystem role players that have a responsibility to ensure that as Transnet executes on it, as Eskom executes on its mandate, it does so effectively, and those structures that have been vested with the different responsibilities actually execute their own responsibility relating to strengthening accountability and oversight within the Eskom environment. The one area that I want to firstly just agree with honorable members on is the need to strengthen accountability in Eskom across all levels. That is going to be critical in dealing with some of the repeat findings that have been identified through our efforts. It's also going to be critical, and I agree with most of the suggestions that the committee members have made around strengthening also the oversight of the committee over the affairs of Eskom. And I think we certainly welcome those proposals that have been made by the different honorable members in terms of what is the more that can be done by the committee in terms of strengthening the oversight and increasing and strengthening accountability in this environment. So we really want to just firstly appreciate that from the committee members. In looking at the questions, I'm also going to invite Deloitte, and I'm also going to invite my colleagues from the Auditor-General to also assist in responding to some of the questions that have been raised by the honorable members. And I'm also appreciating that some of the comments and inputs that we've received are really just a reaffirmation of our common understanding of the challenges that face Eskom. And ultimately, some of those would then be answered by our colleagues from Eskom, and when they do come through to engage with the committee on the audit outcomes. Maybe just to start off with, Honorable Paulson raised a question around the outsourcing of the audit of Eskom. So in terms of the act that governs the work of the Auditor-General, the AG has a prerogative to assess on a regular basis in terms of Section 4.3 of that particular act, audits that she would want to do internally, and audits that she would then outsource to other firms that can assist, right? So Eskom is one of those that on a regular basis, the AG does an assessment, and at this particular moment in time, she has decided that for this period, she will allow Deloitte to support us in the audit. And on an annual basis, we then do this assessment and ensure that we are comfortable that at the end of the day, the auditors that are going to be auditing this entity have the right capacity and have the right skills and experience to be able to give us credible assurance over the affairs of Eskom. So again, we're quite comfortable with the work that our Deloitte colleagues have done, and we continue to work with them. We have completed the audit of Eskom, so this is indeed the final report. It has been engaged at various levels with the minister. We've also engaged with the board. We've also engaged with executive management within Eskom. So it has been thoroughly ventilated in terms of the different governance structures that are there, including the oversight from the minister. There are a couple of areas, I think, where committee members have reflected on procurement and contract management and irregular procurement processes. And I think one of the themes that we picked up as the committee members were reflecting on the questions was the issue of, with these irregularities, what is does it actually arise or result in criminal activity, and what is being done about that? And I think the committee members are more concerned around what is actually being done around this particular matters. Is anybody being held accountable? Is the enforcement to the extent that it is possible? One of the things that Andre and Pumu spoke a lot about was the issue of slow progress in consequence management, and what has informed that in the Eskom environment has also been the slow pace in terms of which investigations into these matters are conducted, which would ultimately lead to those responsible actually being held accountable. So when we look at this, we're saying, yes, there are these irregularities that have happened, but the quicker and the faster you conclude on the investigations, the quicker you can actually get to holding the respective people accountable. Andre also spoke about the issue of record keeping as one of those that actually deter effective consequence management. And again, that is an area within Eskom that actually needs to be strengthened, right? So ultimately, what Deloitte has done is that in conducting their audit, they've also issued the reportable irregularities, of which the board also has a responsibility of ensuring that those are investigated and ultimately action is taken against those that are responsible. So I'll give over to Andre on that one so that he can then also just indicate the progress around the irregularities that have been reported to ERPA. I think there's also been a theme around the internal control environment and the weaknesses that impact the internal control environment. And again, there we're saying, yes, we agree with the committee in terms of even their own reflection of the repeat findings. And I think the question came to say, is this due to lack of knowledge? What is the root cause of this? And what we've noted is that in this entity, it's not due to lack of internal controls or internal policies, right? What has impacted the breakdown that we see in the internal control environment or the lack of improvement in the internal control environment has purely been attributed to, by and large, three factors, right? The one is lack of accountability. The second one has been around ineffective oversight, and the other one has also been around ineffective consequence management as it relates to some of the things that should be dealt with as part of strengthening that internal control environment. So it's quite important that those governance mechanisms actually be put in place so that there is accountability that's driven across the board in the different governance structures within the entity. The one area that I also want to agree with honorable members on is around the need for the quarterly, and I think I can't remember whether it was Honorable Thring that mentioned this recommendation, the need for quarterly assessment on whether the actions that are being put in place are effective, and not only within Eskom itself, but also in terms of the board and the oversight structures also holding the entity accountable to those measures that will ensure improvement, whether it be audit action plans, whatever it may be that they're putting in place, there needs to be accountability and oversight around those particular matters. I want to just hand over to Andre and Fumo and to deal with the residual questions, but particularly maybe focusing on the questions that have been raised around revenue management, the factors that have been raised around the performance, as well as the going concern. And maybe, Fumo, as we close, we can also just touch on the role that we play as the Auditor-General in terms of our regular engagement with the board of Eskom, with the audit committee and the executive management of Eskom. With your permission, Chair, I would like to first hand over to Andre, and then Fumo will come in and close in on any other questions that we might have missed. Andre, over to you.
Thanks, Madi. Thanks, Chair. So quite a few questions were raised, and I think validly so. When one looks at this report, you can be alarmed, and I would be too. What is important is that one actually considers these overall, and I think Madi made a very good observation when she said that we need to look at the accountability, the monitoring, and the oversight processes, as well as then the consequence management. We have alluded to the fact in our audit report, and this is on page 33 of the financial statements, we have highlighted that it takes around about 1.92 years to investigate a matter that has been put forward as a matter for consideration for irregular or fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So if you consider that and the fact that it takes so long, in that period, it continues happening because you are not resolving it. So that, according to me, is one of the key issues here, that there is a delay in responding to matters that are highlighted, and it takes too long to get action to remediate. So critical that we just consider that. And that's just an add-on to what Madi has highlighted. There were questions around irregular expenditure, and I want to deal with those firstly. There was a question around, and I think this came from Honourable Member Paulson, around whether irregular expenditure was linked to criminals and whether these were identified and what measures were taken, etc. We as auditors highlight what we find and we report on those to management. Part of our concern is, again, the time that it takes to investigate and follow through. And for that reason, we also highlighted the fact that we have reported an a reportable irregularity because of our view that from a fiduciary perspective, it takes too long to address matters. It takes too long to get reports and financial records to be updated with valid information. You can only update with valid information once you have investigated and done the determination appropriately. So from our perspective, that is the reason we don't investigate. We don't go and look who the criminal is necessarily and what has happened and whether we mistake further steps or report further. We report it to management and their processes take over. So they would take it to their forensic division or their internal audit department. I think the question on irregular expenses as well, which is, and I'm sorry for looking, we've written on the board, which deals with, the deviation and abuse of processes. That relates to an internal process with a subsidiary, and that is where sole sourcing procurement processes were followed, but when you do that, you would outsource or you would assign that work to the subsidiary. Our finding here was that it was assigned to the subsidiary, but they then on their side outsourced it externally. So they have not done the work for Eskom. They got subcontractors to do the work for Eskom. So that is a deviation of the policy, and they exceeded their thresholds, which is 20 or 25%, and they outsourced or they subcontracted in excess of those levels. So what you find is you would not necessarily have followed the sole sourcing path to assign it. You would most probably have gone for a tender at the higher level and got 3 quotes at that point in time. So that is what we highlighted there. I think there is a further question around irregular expenditure. How many involved in irregularities have been reported and prosecuted? That is difficult to quantify. I think what is important, and I know that there has been a response to that already, is that the follow-up is the most important thing, and the time-based responsiveness is critical. And I can assure you that at this point in time is a concern for us. The other question around irregularity is paying to parties who are not party to the agreement. That is an item that we highlighted in the current year and in the prior year, and where we have followed through on those items, it would appear that this relates to a party that is supporting certain of the smaller contractors financially, and the payments for certain of these contracts go through this financier's company. So the financier is not a party to the original agreement, and it's not. According to us, there should be a tri-party arrangement should those payments be going through to the financier. The issue around prepaid tokens, I think it's important that we just perhaps dwell on that for a few minutes. We've got the prepaid token environment at the application level. That is at the top. If you apply, you go through the system. You want to buy a prepaid token. You go through your institution, your bank, or your retailer, and you go through that process. All of that works. What we found was, following on from management's forensic investigation, was that there were certain individuals with privileged access in the business, and that's also dealt with in our report. And that resulted in inadequate segregation of duties. And these people were able to go at an operating level. And it would appear that at the operating level, these illicit tokens were created. But because of the limitations that we're experiencing in that certain of the delimiters and limitation switches on the HSM modules and others were not activated, certain backup processes were not adhered to, and there is a loss of information. The logs were not kept, and there's a loss of information. So to answer the question, what is the value of illicit tokens? It's impossible to quantify that accurately. We can tell you we can see what activity there is, but that will not be a complete indication of the extent of the illicit tokens created. And the other challenge is that to assess whether an illicit token has been used, on the old prepaid systems, we are not talking about smart meters now, because smart meters are being rolled out. The old system, you cannot assess whether an illicit token is used without actually physically assessing it on the unit at the customer's premises. So you have to visit the premises and read the meter to see if the illicit token was entered in the meter. So it is currently impossible to assess how much was created and how much of the illicit tokens were used up to now. Where you would pick this up is in the losses due to criminal conduct, where you've got non-technical losses, where it is the unaccounted for loss of electricity that comes through the system. So effectively, it is when you can't account for all the electricity you've received and what you have sold. That unaccounted for electricity volume is deemed to be non-technical or technical losses. And this relates to the non-technical losses. Okay. The matter of going concern and Honourable Member Milan highlighted this. Yes, you're right. Eskom is a going concern because of the bailout from the government. And that is in the second bullet of the presentation, where we do report the ongoing support of government, and we indicate that that is a key matter that is considered. Let's just go through the next one. Asking questions on what is our role in terms of that. Okay, so what is our role in terms of the lateness of the financial statements? So to deal with the current year, I think there were two matters that held up the audit. The first matter related to the illicit tokens, and that was a large exercise between forensic auditors, between data and data analysts, between your system architects, your cyber specialists, our risk advisory, our computer IT specialists, and management's experts. And that took the time to go through those processes, to understand the landscape at an operating level, not only at an application level. The other area that contributed to the delay was the effective date or the effective corporatization of transmission business into NTCSA, and the resulted impact of drawing effective date accounts and agreeing on how that business would go forward and the financial viability of that business. And that was only finalized towards the middle of December, and those are the two areas that contributed to the delay. The question around the previous 3 years, the first year of the audit involved a significant number of adjustments that were processed, and there the client did issue a SENS indicating the number of adjustments that were processed on when we took over the audit. So I think I've responded to that matter. Okay, so on the 1.3 billion rand, again, Honourable Member Millihan, there is a word missing in that slide which you picked up on, and that is that we were unable to get to that slide, unable to substantiate the estimate and judgment supplied in management's estimation of the baseline. So there was a tabular explanation around how this was determined, but then getting to the actual figure applied, there is some judgment that's involved, and we are unable to substantiate how those estimates and judgments were applied in the end. Okay. Okay. So when we look at Honourable Bapti, when we looked at the CAM relating to projects and mega build, which projects were involved there? Obviously, the mega build projects that we are dealing with currently relates to Kusile and relates to Medupi. And those are the mega build projects that we, and Ngula, and those are the mega build projects that are currently being dealt with. Honourable Member Nkosi, you asked the question around what part of the audit was still continuing and whether the audit was finalised. So when it comes to the audit for March 2024, this is the final audit opinion. The audit is finalised and there is no outstanding work relating to the 2024 audit. Okay, so I think I have answered the majority of the questions that were leveled at us. Fumo, I don't know if there is something that you want to close out on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Andre. I just want to address just a few remaining questions. Maybe starting with the question on the role of the AGSA, so which also links with the comment that Madi has led for us. So as you know, Chair, the audit is the audit of Deloitte. However, this audit is done with a condition from the AG that the AGSA must be involved in monitoring the audit to address audit risk and also matters of public interest. The reason we do that is to ensure that anything that Parliament and government structures would need from the audit, we are able to support that. Anything of public interest is able to we address that as well. So that way, whether Deloitte is or whether the Eskom is audited by Deloitte or another private entity or by the AGSA, there will be no difference between, because the involvement of the AGSA in the audit provide a close on that particular gap. We form part of Deloitte's team in terms of all the stakeholder engagements, all the audit committee and governmental meetings that we need to attend. We attend with them. We engage with the board as well, we engage with the minister as well in terms of raising this issue that we're raising and also getting commitments from them in terms of what are they going to do to address this particular matter. So basically, we're trying to highlight that this audit, for as long as, even if though it's privately audited, the scope and the nature of the audit will then be similar to when it will be audited by the AGSA. The question from Honourable Thring on whether the new powers of the AGSA are being applied on all these irregularities that we have reported. The answer is no. And that is the difference between the audit audited by the AGSA and that which is audited by the private audit firm. However, the part that Andre represented on reportable irregularities, it is a similar accountability process to that of the material regulatory that the AGSA have under the new powers. Under both areas, the objective is to enforce the existing accountability processes in terms of the legislation, being PFM and the Companies Act, that when there's a irregularity that has happened, both legislation requires the board to implement investigations and hold people accountable. And both these reported irregularities, as Deloitte will have reported, or material irregularities, as we would have reported, they actually send back to the board, do something about these things. If we have the view that the matter the board is involved or the board would not be the right structure to deal with them, we then refer to the relevant body. That's why you will see that even on the matters that Deloitte have reported, they would have referred them to the ERBA to deal with the matters. So it will be similar way of dealing with the matters, safe to say they come from the different legislation. There was a comment from Honorable Bapti around if Eskom was not a public entity, would the conclusion remain the same around going concern? When we assess going concern, we look at the individual merits of the circumstances facing each individual entities. So it becomes difficult to be able to say, would the conclusion be the same if there's a private entity? However, what is important to note is that here we have got a public entity that has got government guarantees, where the government is saying, in the event that Eskom defaults, I will step in. And the funders will then find that valuable. So in a private entity, if also the private entity has got a guarantee from their shareholders, and those guaranteed are found to be credible, that assessment will also factor in those particular things. Because, sorry about that, because even here we're looking at a guarantee from a shareholder who is saying, I'm going to step in. Also the private entity, if it's the same matter, will also assess it in the same way. And again, from Honorable Bapti around recommendation that is ending around whether the NECC reports can be accessible to the committee. We have the view that nothing stops the committee from requesting the Minister of Electricity or the presidency or member or the leader, the committee itself to appear before the committee to answer questions that the committee will want, or to provide documents or information that the committee needs, because that committee is delivering on a public mandate, which then is within the scope of this committee or parliament to be able to oversee that particular public mandate. So we do recommend that if there's anything that they want from the National Electricity Council, the Council Committee, that the committee can be contacted for that. And then there was also a comment from Honorable Malem around the viability risk, where we spoke about the generation of electricity becomes one of the key main reason or dependency for Eskom to be able to succeed. And I think Honorable Member is saying maybe the dependency is the government guarantees. What we're saying here with highlighting the importance of generation of electricity is that government guarantees alone will never be able to drive the viability of the entity. The viability of the entity is driven by the entity's ability to deliver on its primary mandate. And that primary mandate is supply of electricity. So if you can give guarantees to a company that is not producing electricity, it's not going to have that entity. So that's why we are elevating that particular part to say sustainable delivery of electricity is the biggest driver around the viability of the entity. And then, and then lastly, a question from Honorable Hassan. Can suppliers be blacklisted based on AGSA finding? Suppliers get blacklisted based on the decision from the board that will say, through our own investigations, we have found the supplier to have abused the entity's SCM processes. Abuse would mean whether they've committed fraud or corruption or failed to deliver in the contract. And what needs to happen to reach that conclusion is that the irregularities that we report from the audit point of view, or from internal audit, or from other tip-offs or allegations that the entity have internally, that they must be investigated. And once they've investigated, the outcome of that will then inform the board to be able to make a decision. What will be the appropriate remedy against the officials who are part of that and the supplier themselves? And part of that remedy will be, I'm going to blacklist the supplier with the National Treasury. Yes, the audit outcome can be part of the input to the process of the auditee starting an investigation. Thank you very much, Madi. I think we've addressed the questions. Maybe you can close it off from your side.
Okay. No, thank you so much, Pumo, Andre, for assisting in responding to the inputs and questions from the members. I do hope, Honorable Chair, that we have indeed done justice in responding to some of the matters that came through in the Q&A. And I think we just want to, as we close, just again indicate our availability as the Auditor General in supporting the work of the committee. And again, the call to action is really around improving accountability and strengthening accountability and oversight over Eskom so that this entity is able to be financially and operationally sustainable. I'll pause the chair and hand over back to yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, AG. Honorable members, I think the Auditor General's office and Deloitte has answered our questions. And anyway, on Friday we'll be with Eskom. We can ask more than we have asked today, and it will be our opportunity to ask the detail of these things. I don't see any other hand, which means then therefore we have to thank the Office of the AG and also Deloitte by presenting such a good report like this one. All other things, we have taken note of them, and we'll make sure that we do an oversight on these things out of their advice. Thanks ever so much. We are more than thanking you, understanding that this is not a good work that you are doing, and also it consumes a lot of energy and a lot of thinking, but you manage to assist us in taking, understanding that it's not the end of the story. There's still another work to be done, as we are saying that an investigation, thorough one, needs to be done, and also the accountability, or for those that are supposed to account, must tell us what has happened in those cases and also in these issues. Thanks ever so much once more. Secretary, is there anything that is outstanding from the side of the AGs? And
yeah, just the minutes, Chair, the outstanding minutes.
Oh no, we have to excuse them and allow them to excuse them in the meeting, or we recuse them. Thanks ever so much. Take care, Auditor General, also Deloitte.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Have yourselves a good day further. Thank you.
Stay blessed. Thanks. Bye.
Sure.
Bye, Andre.
So these are the minutes of Wednesday, 27 November, Chair.
27 November. Leaders are...
Yeah, so as I say, this was the committee meeting on Wednesday, 27 November on the STS and then on the INAP, Chair. These are quite lengthy minutes, Chair. This one, for example, is 10 pages. Up until page 10, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary. Are there any corrections in the minutes? Honorable members?
Chair, I move the adoption.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second, Honorable Hassan.
Thank you, honorable members. Minutes has been adopted and also seconded. The next set, how many set? 2?
Only 2, Chair.
Yes, okay. The last one?
So this is the minutes of Wednesday, 4 December. The meeting you spoke about earlier with Eskom and the NTCSA, Chair.
Okay.
These minutes are 12 pages. Here we go, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. Here are the minutes of the 4th of December.
I propose the adoption, Chair.
Honorable Mpata proposed the adoption as a true reflection.
Honorable
Any
Hassan is happy to second.
Honorable Hassan seconds. Thank you very much, honorable members.
That's it, Chair.
Secretary?
Yeah, we are finished with the minutes, Chair. So just to announce that the next meeting is on Friday, the 31st of January, starting at 9:30, Chair. That link has been sent to members as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only, and that meeting is gonna be virtual, unfortunately, honorable members. Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. It was not an easy meeting today because we have to listen thoroughly so that we can be able to engage Eskom on Friday. Thanks ever so much. The meeting has adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, colleagues.
Cheers. Bye.